individual. So I want you to keep that in mind as I speak today, because people are going to wonder about my credibility. People are going to wonder about the credibility of the abductees in my labs who share their information with me. And yet, for many years, these same people who are questioning the credibility of myself and my colleagues have bought into the lies of the establishment, have bought into the lies of the scientific community. And nowhere is that more prevalent than in the UFO field. For example, today is the age of the camcorder. You can't very well debunk and mock and ridicule a camcorder. So what happens? These experts in the aerospace field pop up, like so many pieces of feces which refuse to stay flushed. They pop up and they say, oh, well, that's just the stealth craft. And the dumb, ignorant audience, the national television audience, nods their head dumbly, yeah, stealth. But stealth, folks, has nothing to do with the visual spectrum. Stealth has everything to do with what's known as the radar cross-section, the RCS, of a craft, utilizing certain composite materials, designing the craft in such a way as there's no right angles to reflect back radar signals. The radar cross-section can be reduced to such an extent that for all intents and purposes it is invisible to radar. Not entirely invisible, but small enough to thwart any attempt at ground control intercept radar stations, airborne radar lock-on platforms to lock on to the craft. So when people say, well, oh, that video shows like a stealth aircraft, that's just another lie. And they can only get away with that because the general public is ignorant about such issues. If it was a stealth aircraft, what is it doing lighting up the whole countryside? Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of stealth? I mean, think about it. It defeats the whole purpose of stealth. Now, unless you're talking about the invisible jumbo jet that crashed in the Pentagon, that was equipped with a Romulan cloaking device. But the thing is, you always have these shills, and there's some here at this conference, UFO debunkers. Now, you can always tell who a UFO debunker is. Essentially a paid government liar. How do you know? Well, rule number one in counterintelligence, psychological warfare operations is you have to have a plausible reason for being someplace. If you're, and by its very nature, a UFO debunker is a covert and deniable asset of the U.S. government or some other government. But they have to have an explanation for being somewhere. This is like in overseas operations. A person may have the cover of Agency for International Development. They could have the cover of a foreign service worker. They can have a cover of a relief worker. A UFO debunker doesn't have a reason for being here. They don't have a reason why on their pretty websites they have nothing but articles debunking alien abductions, debunking the UFO subject in general. So just keep all this in mind. I have to preface this because there are some people out there that still cling on to this notion that people with PhDs and other letters after their name are somehow more credible than people who don't have those letters after their name. So now that I got that out of the way, you're probably wondering who I am. My name is James Bartley, and I've had somewhat of an eclectic background in the telecommunications field and the insurance industry. I spent a number of years as a civilian working in an intelligence-related capacity for the Department of the Navy, in particular Naval Air Forces. My rather innocuous title was that of database coordinator. I worked in communications. One of the things that always struck me as humorous is all these experts with magnifying glasses poring over alleged official government documents, and they're saying, well, you know, the comma's out of place, oh, well, the font is not right. Well, I really can't comment on how the formatting was years ago, but I know that today, really, some of the official messages you will read from different commands can be as breezy and as irreverent as an email. They don't necessarily follow a particular standard. Now, what did I do? Well, I really can't elaborate on what I did in communications because the powers that be are bound and determined to go to war with China and God knows how many other countries. But I will say that probably more than most in the intelligence community, I had extreme exposure to intelligence summaries from a multitude of intelligence agencies. Ones that you're familiar with, maybe not so familiar with. Also R&D centers like the Army's Missile Development Center, Redstone Arsenal, the various intelligence sections of the various commands, theater-level commands, Army-level commands, Air Force commands. When you're in communications, you are smack dab in the middle of just an astounding stream of intelligence-related information. Much of it really doesn't need to be classified, actually. On a daily basis, I interacted with members of the Naval Intelligence and Naval Security Group, which is Naval Security Group, or NAVSEC is the naval subsidiary of the National Security Agency. I was responsible for creating entire streams of classified and unclassified message traffic, what are known as AGS, AIGS, addressed indicator groups. Let me make one up. AG 555, it could be about aircraft maintenance. I was also responsible for creating what are known as CADs, collective address designators. Now let me make one up. NASCAR. Anybody that had an interest in NASCAR from a crew standpoint, driver standpoint, or racetrack standpoint, were all action or info addressees on these types of messages. Not only was I a member involved in communications, but I was the go-to guy in the command. If somebody in anti-submarine warfare needed a certain type of message traffic, they came to me. If somebody involved in electronic countermeasures, flying around in the EAB prowlers, they came to me. If somebody that worked at a contractor working at one of the power propulsion desk, for whether it's contractors from Pratt & Whitney, General Electric, what have you, they came to me. They came to me with the types of messages they needed to see. And I manipulated the database to ensure that they got those messages and nothing else. Nobody wants to see message traffic that's unrelated to their activity. I had carte blanche to visit any communications station, either onshore or our particular interest was with the carrier battle groups as well as the affiliated naval air stations. So within our region, I had carte blanche to visit any communication station. By the time I left, my clearance was being upgraded to a crypto level, and I would have been the go-to guy. I would have been in charge of running a standalone communication system for our 3-star admiral, what's known as a type command, our 3-star admiral in charge of all naval aviation activities in the Persian Gulf, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific. But I chose not to stick around. I resigned. On top of that, I'm a student of military history with an emphasis on intelligence, counterintelligence, and special operations. I'm also a student of the American Civil War. So unlike most people in the military, who I find to be astonishingly ignorant about the history of this country and the history of even their particular military activity, I was sort of well-rounded. I understood the significance of what it was I was reading. I understood the history of what it was I was reading. So that's just a bit about me. And one other thing that you need to know about me is that I am an alien abductee. I've had numerous encounters with reptilians, with what are known as the reptilian grays. You always hear about the ubiquitous gray beings. Well, the beings that I had encounters with in full waking consciousness were what are known as reptilian grays, what the late, great Dr. Carla Turner referred to as the chicken claws. They don't have a long finger and a long nail. They just have claws. And when you wake up and then you find yourself surrounded by 3 of these things with claws and they're looking down at you, believe me, that can be a pretty traumatic experience. So I know wherein I speak. When I speak about alien abductions, and particularly encounters with reptilians, I can develop an instant kinship and understanding with others who have experienced the same things. My colleagues and I have always taken the approach of being friends first, researchers later, because people will only open up to you if they know that you have a vested emotional interest in them. Too often,